I don't know whose this is, but that's not going to work. Thanks. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Now, the Deputy Premier and I will start off just with our update on health, and then we'll move on to discussing Cairns and also our tourism announcement for today for the tropical far north. So, first of all, can I update everyone with stating that we have one new case overnight in Queensland, which is a very positive news. And that person, that new case, is a close contact of someone from the Corrective Services Training Academy. So we're very happy with that. In the last 24 hours, over 6,800 tests were conducted. And once again, we encourage anyone who has any symptoms to please go and get tested. It is absolutely imperative to go and get tested. So look, I'll hand over to the Deputy Premier to say a few words, and then we're happy to take questions about health first, and then we'll move on to discussing other things. But I do want to say, before I hand over to the Deputy Premier, let me say this very clearly, that Queensland will continue to have our borders closed to keep Queenslanders safe. I'm not going to be moved on this, so the federal government can throw whoever they want at that. We can have Clive Palmer as well, but I'm not going to be moved because fundamentally the health of Queenslanders is my number one concern. And you can't have a strong economy, you can't have the economy growing unless you have the health under control. Now, I've seen some reports today about a young boy who had an appointment at Prince Charles. And let me say, I understand that this is a very difficult time for people. It is a very emotional time for people. And what I've asked the Deputy Premier as Health Minister and also the departments to do is to actually set up a unit where they can deal with these specialist appointments in a coordinated manner. I also want to have a social worker working in that unit as well, because it is a very distressing time for families. And of course it's going to be like this for some time because our borders are closed to protect the health of Queenslanders. But we are not going to deny emergency treatment to people in New South Wales, and we are not going to deny specialist appointments to people who need the specialist appointments in Queensland. Let me make that very clear. And I understand how distressing this is, so we're going to set up this hotline to make sure that we can deal with these, to coordinate with the families in a timely manner, and then they will be prioritised to the Chief Health Officer. And as you can appreciate, our Chief Health Officer, Dr. Young, has a lot to do at the moment, focusing on keeping Queenslanders safe. And by setting up this coordinated response by the end of the week, I actually think that will help alleviate a lot of concerns. So I'll hand over to the Deputy Premier. Then we'll take questions on health, and then we'll move on to the other matters. Thanks, DP.
Thank you, Premier. So the additional case that we confirmed overnight was a close contact of one of the already confirmed cases connected to the Correctional Services Training Academy. They had been identified as a close contact already and were in quarantine at the time in which they became infectious, and so they're only thought to have been in the community for just 2 days. At this point of a rapid response to a cluster, this is really the best we can hope for. Very small numbers of people already identified as contacts and already in quarantine, and therefore of relatively low risk of continued spread. It means we have 27 active cases right now. In the last 24-hour period, the testing level has settled back to a more normal level of 6,865 tests. The result of that has been that our turnaround time in the labs has returned to close to the normal level. It was about 25 hours in the last testing period here in Cairns. They're turning those tests around in 10 hours at our public labs, which is fantastic. Thank you.
Can you tell
us more about the unit? Will this be for doctors and Northern New South Wales to call as well, where the infectious diseases?
Yeah, this will be a dedicated unit within the Chief Health Officer's team that will be clinically led and include a range of professions, including, as the Premier said, social workers, nurses and doctors who will be the right people to be making these kinds of decisions. I want to emphasise that a lot of these exemptions get approved, a lot of them pass unnoticed. The couple that have been reported on are a very, very small proportion of the total number. However, they are too many, and so we want an escalation process so that they can be very quickly addressed. All of the tests that have come back at this stage have been negative. However, we continue to test throughout the lockdown and quarantine period, and so we'll continue to get test results over that full 2-week period. I'll have to get that number for you.
The 10-person limit at visiting people's houses, when will that be reviewed next? When might we see that?
That's the kind of thing that we would normally review after 1 to 2 incubation periods of no known infectious person in the community, and so that's still a number of weeks away.
We've seen small numbers so far, but is there a number that if we got to that restrictions would further tighten?
Well, again, that we'd have to see sustained community transmission, and we'll continue to monitor that. Well, first of all, I'd say that I really understand how distressing these situations are, but the border restrictions are in place for a reason, and that's to keep our community safe. Funerals are considered very high-risk events. They have been considered very high-risk events throughout the entire pandemic, and so sadly that has meant some people have missed the funerals of their loved ones, and all I could say is that I'm sorry that that's the case, but these border restrictions are important. Funerals are high-risk events.
Isn't the problem here, though, that they were stuffed around? They were originally told they didn't need an exemption. Then when they got closer to the funeral day, they were told that they did need an exemption.
Look, I understand those concerns, and certainly as the directions and restrictions have changed over time, that has on occasion resulted in confusion. If they have been provided incorrect advice at a point in time, then I'm sorry for that. The situation at this stage is that if they have travelled through a hotspot, they're unlikely to be granted an exemption at the border.
Doctors say that people who are struggling to buy masks at the moment, particularly GPs.
So in terms of GPs, I'd urge them to contact their primary health network. They have a supply from the national stockpile. However, if they are unable to access masks through that supply, then Queensland Health will make our mask stockpile available to the primary healthcare network. But it's important that we reserve that supply as far as possible for our hospitals, and so I would urge them to go through their usual suppliers in the first instance. With regards to the public, the Chief Health Officer has increased her advice with regards to masks, and so members of the public in the southeast should have a mask available if they find themselves in a situation where they can't socially distance, such as on public transport. But in my experience, the few stores I've visited in the last little while, there's been plenty of masks available. Oh, look, there's no need to panic buy face masks. We have a very large supply both in the national and the new state stockpile. There's lots in the private market as well that are entirely suitable. And I understand lots of people are making their own masks, 3-layer masks, which might not be quite as effective as those TGA-approved masks, but they're almost as good. I'd certainly urge retailers not to price gouge, but I don't think there'll be a lot of opportunity to. There is significant supply of masks that are suitable for the general public. So we've applied these restrictions on a HHS district by district basis. The Darling Downs HHS has had infectious people in their community during the period in which we are concerned, and so it's therefore important to put these restrictions in place. The gathering restrictions apply statewide at the level of 30, but in those areas of the southeast they have been limited to 10. People can gather in larger groups though at venues that have COVID safe plans. So the implication of these restrictions should still mean people can go ahead with functions. It just means they have to move them to a restaurant, pub, club or a restaurant. Those restrictions, as I said, will continue to apply for that 1 to 2 incubation periods after we know that somebody was infectious in those communities, so we'll continue to monitor that. The advice of the Chief Health Officer is that in those areas, people should wear masks if they are unable to socially distance, that's an appropriate precaution that people could be taking right now.
Doctors have been warning for several weeks that there's been some confusion with those cross-border medical transfers. What's been the catalyst now to do this now?
Well, look, I'd emphasise just that throughout those few weeks, the vast bulk of these exemptions have been approved either by class or by individual very, very quickly. And so the number of cases that you're hearing, the number of cases that have been complained about, is actually a very, very small proportion of them. But we've said we want to do better. And so we've been discussing how we might be able to do that, how we might be able to make sure we have clinicians empowered and in charge of providing advice more quickly to the Chief Health Officer where that's required, and that's what we're putting in place. In regional areas, there is no known community transmission, no known risk of community transmission. If people feel better, if people feel more comfortable wearing a mask, then that's fine. There's no reason they shouldn't. It certainly won't do any harm. But that advice that where you can't socially distance in the community, you should consider wearing a mask, that just applies in the greater Brisbane, Logan, Ipswich, Toowoomba and Darling Downs and Gold Coast areas.
Should people who can start buying them now just in case something changes?
There's no need for anyone to panic. There's plenty of supply. Lots of people I know are making their own masks. There's lots of fashion outlets selling fancy masks now. So there's lots of different mask options for people. There's no need for anyone to panic, and there's certainly no known infection risk here in Cairns. I'll have to find that out for you.
Would you be surprised if other states start closing their borders to Queensland, given the cluster in the southeast?
Look, the cluster in the southeast at this stage appears to be under control, but we would expect them to do precisely what we have done, monitor the situation in our own state and in other states and make decisions based on what will best keep our state and our citizens safe. That's what the Premier has been very, very clear about, and that's what we continue to do. I don't think that's likely. We're talking very, very low numbers at this stage, just one confirmed case in quarantine today. The question of where the AFL discussions are at is probably best directed to the Premier if you want to ask.
Do you think it's necessary for us to make wearing face masks in public borders?
No, not at this stage. This is just a very cautious advice from the Chief Health Officer to people in the southeast in those occasions where they can't socially distance. But what we don't want is for people to use masks to replace social distancing. Social distancing is much more effective than masks.
We'll do AFL later. We're going to do Cairns now, all right, because we're in Cairns and it's wonderful to be here. And of course, the Cabinet will be meeting later on this morning, and of course, ministers are going to be out and about, and also speaking to not just tourism operators but business operators as well, to make sure that we are responding to the needs of the community. So, of course, there's going to be a lot of announcements happening over the next few days, but today I'm very pleased to announce over $11 million to assist our tourism operators here in Cairns. It's great news to see that Brisbane to Cairns has now become the premier route of airline traffic in Australia, and of course it's a beautiful place to come and visit, and we want to encourage more Queenslanders to come up here because Cairns is definitely good to go. So the money I'm announcing today is $6.5 million for 4 shovel-ready projects which will help over 120 jobs. These projects include $2 million towards an additional 40 van sites supporting infrastructure for Paranella Park, $3 million towards the construction of Dreamtime Island for Reef Magic Cruises in Cairns, $500,000 towards Wildlife Habitat's new Croc Arena at Port Douglas, and $1 million towards the construction of 21 air-conditioned ensuite accommodation units up towards the famous lava tubes at Mount Surprise. And of course $3 million to help attract more events here for Cairns. And of course we have some AFL teams coming up here very shortly. I think they start arriving this week. And $1.8 million to assist our reef fleet operators. And of course we've always had Cairns front and centre. We know that Cairns has been feeling a lot of the economic impact from the world pandemic, especially with the impact of no international tourists, and that's why I'm absolutely adamant that Queenslanders need to get out there and keep supporting Queenslanders. So today, this injection of money is to help the economy, and the reason we can help our economy is because we have had a strong response to COVID here in Queensland, and you can't have the economy open up unless you are responding quickly and rapidly. And that is really encouraging news that we've only had one new case overnight and a confirmed contact. But this job is for all of Queenslanders, and that means where you can't socially distance, especially in the southeast, that's the time to put a mask on. In the regions, you don't have to worry about that because the Deputy Premier said there is no community transmission. But of course, we're going to be speaking a lot this week about health over the next few days. The convention centre, the sod turning of that will get underway as well later on this week, $170 million. And of course, that's setting up Cairns for the future in terms of the expansion of the Cairns Convention Centre to be able to have more events here, but also will really capitalise on tourism and conventions as well. So, look, I'll hand over to Minister Jones to say a few words, and can I also thank the local members will be speaking as well. We've got a very strong team up here, and this team is committed to keeping Queenslanders safe and driving the economic reform that we need to get businesses back to work. And we know that it is having a big impact on the local economy here, and that is why we are doing everything we can to support businesses and to support locals get back into work. So I'll hand over to Minister Jones and then the local MPs, and then we're happy to take some questions. And also a big thank you to Advance Cairns as well. Of course, they had their Tropical Far North convoy, which came down to Parliament House and met with a range of our ministers, and we hope that during the next few days that our ministers will be continuing to engage with them. I know I've got a round table with small business and tourism operators tomorrow, and of course we listen and we respond. And that announcement today about the $11 million is directly from listening to the tourism operators up here and to make sure we're putting money into that infrastructure to kickstart the economy and get those local jobs happening. So I'll hand over to Kate.
Well, it's great to be here with the Premier and the whole of Cabinet in Cairns this week, and it's wonderful to be face-to-face with many of the businesses that have been doing it so tough because of the restrictions in place across the globe, our border. We know that internationally tourists coming to Cairns is one of the highest destinations in our state, and certainly the Cairns tourism industry has done it very tough. Today, as the Premier has said, we're announcing a further $11.3 million in support for the tourism industry up here. This includes $6.5 million towards 4 brand new shovel-ready projects. That means that we are building attractions that will mean more people can come to the region and stay longer and spend more money in the local economy. In addition to that, what Advance Cairns asked for and we are responding to is a $3 million package to support events coming here. We know that one of the great drivers to get people to visit a region is to host events. That's why, as part of the conditions we had with the AFL, for example, they had to ensure that they had teams based in the region and that they also would have games up here. This is, once again, another driver of economic activity that we can use during these tough COVID times. Also, we're very pleased to announce $1.8 million to extend the lease fee relief at the port. We know that many businesses in the marine business here, taking normally international tourists out to the reef, have been hardest hit. So we're very pleased to extend the fee relief at the port until December this year. We are working hand in glove with the tourism industry throughout this year. We've announced hundreds of millions of dollars in support and will continue to work with them as we see them ride through these very tough times. But as the Premier has also said, we are also in a position where here in Queensland we are seeing Queenslanders adopt the message of good to go, and Queenslanders are voting with their feet and coming to destinations like Cairns to support the tourism industry when they need it most. Thanks.
Thanks, Premier. Good morning, and it's great to be able to welcome my Cabinet colleagues back to Cairns. I could not think of a more important time in the history of this city to have the Queensland Cabinet here for a couple of days to be able to talk about those very, very important things, not only the health response that's underway, but also the economic response and the future for this city. It also gives me as a local member a good opportunity to be able to showcase some of the projects that are currently underway, where we have 100% employment occurring across our construction sites, to be able to show the Premier and Cabinet colleagues where those are at, and for us as local members to be able to articulate what our future vision is for this city and for far north Queensland. So a good couple of days, but very, very important couple of days ahead of us.
Good morning, everyone. Look, I'm really pleased to be welcoming the Queensland Cabinet, led by the Premier, to far north Queensland. As we know, far north Queensland is bigger than Cairns. We have a great growing community in the south of Cairns, which you'd expect me to say. But clearly what we know is that there is a fantastic array of particularly civil construction occurring right across the region. As you've heard from the member for Barron River, it's very clear that there is a lot of activity right now. But what we are going to require going forward is more activity again. It's going to be activity needed in our housing construction sector. It's going to be further development of our road network that we've obviously got in play right now. But clearly, as you've heard with today's announcement, we are already the sports capital of Australia. And of course, with some of that event attraction money, we hope that we could perhaps attract further sports and other activities to Cairns. We are a very, very great part of Australia always, but particularly now, we are the best part of Australia. So let's hope that we can get more of that activity happening right here in the far north.
Good morning. It's wonderful to have the Premier and Cabinet here in Cairns today. We live in the most wonderful, beautiful part of Queensland, and it is great to hear the announcement by the state government. I can say I welcome the announcement today. In particular, we know how businesses and industries have been challenged through these global pandemic times, and it's important that we continue to support our industries, we continue to support our businesses, but most importantly, we continue to support jobs in local communities. I welcome the news. The injection is going to mean that we can attract more people to the regions, and I look forward to working with everyone as we move through this global pandemic.
Thanks, Premier. Good morning, everybody. I just want to begin by saying, Premier, welcome to Cairns, and for those of you that aren't from Cairns, welcome. Please feel free to enjoy our restaurants. Wait till the bars and pubs open, but stay for as long as you can. It's a pleasure to have you all here. Can I just also acknowledge Minister Jones and the Treasurer, who also this morning gave a resound and very detailed presentation to Advance Cairns. I want to thank in particular the Premier for the announcement today. The tourism industry, as we know in this part of the world, is absolutely essential and vital to our economy. It's a significant employer, so today helps in a range of areas. First and foremostly, it's assist those businesses that have to be incubated until we see the numbers return, and after listening to the Deputy Premier and Health Minister, we can see why we are heading in the right direction at this stage. Secondly, it also assists with jobs and growth of infrastructure, which is also very, very important. The positive thing also, in addition to that, is the fact that we will have a wide range of Cabinet Ministers meeting with a wide range of our communities here today, whether that be commercial, whether that be social. We have ministers that are meeting in relation to manufacturing. Part of the responsibility that we have as the elected members is to carry the message to Brisbane. Fortunately, Brisbane is here today and for the next coming days. 92% of businesses in our region are small businesses, so we'll be ensuring those small businesses get the ears of the decision makers it's a terrific announcement today, Premier. Thank you very much, Minister and following ministers, and we look forward to seeing you all around town in the coming days. Thank you.
All right, we're happy to take some Cairns questions.
Premier, why is it so necessary to be in Cairns, given the advice from the Chief Health Officer has been to wear masks and only travel unless it's necessary?
There is no problem with Cabinet coming to Cairns, and as we saw today, that the numbers of that cluster are all known contacts of that cluster. So we've got to get out and about, we've got to listen to the community, and that's exactly what my government has been doing for the last 5 years, and that is exactly what we will continue to do. Also too, we've had to postpone this twice, and I'm not going to let the Cairns community down, and it was great to see people out this morning when I went for a walk stopping and saying hello, and they're very happy to have everyone here in town listening to them. Look, the National Cabinet has always worked in the best interests of of the nation. But in terms of borders, there is a federal court decision that, and I said this yesterday, that states can rely on the health advice to keep their borders closed, and that's exactly what we will continue to do. Well, we haven't got any papers from the Prime Minister, so I will look at the papers, but I will not be changing my position on keeping Queenslanders safe, full stop.
Health authorities have been crying out for funding for the Cairns University Hospital.
Yep, good question. So Cabinet's meeting today, we'll be having a lot of discussions about all things Cairns and the tropical far north, and of course we will be discussing that very issue. So we'll have more to say over the coming days.
Just to clarify, if there's a national hotspot definition, traffic light system, whatever the Prime Minister decides, we'll still be doing our own thing?
We will be keeping Queenslanders safe, and I have not seen any papers or any evidence about how a hotspot system would work.
Premier, thank you for your relief that's announced today. But with the marine operators moving forward international borders potentially opening up only later next year, the relief you provide today for them is welcome, but it falls short of what their costs are. They've got a lot of obligated costs that they can't overcome.
Yeah.
Is there plans moving forward in the future to assist those small businesses navigate so we have an infrastructure on the other side to supply that demand?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been listening to the operators, which is why we've been putting in place these relief measures. And also, too, there's been a high take-up of our small business grants as well up here in Cairns. My information is over 1,000 businesses have taken up that, and a lot of them would have been tourist operators as well. So we'll continue to work with all of our operators up here, and if there is extra relief that is needed, of course we will consider that, of course. The chief, it's a very of course it's a very upsetting situation, but as the Chief Health Officer said, funerals are very, very high risk, and that is where transmission can happen. So look, any of those issues, like I said, we're going to be setting up that unit there that will provide assistance, especially to people in New South Wales that need that specialist care. All right.
Can I ask each of the local MPs to name one project they will be twisting the Premier's arm over in the next couple of days?
You sure can, but they're always in my ear. So I know that Craig's always on about the Smithfield bypass. I think we're having a look at that later on this morning. And yep. So if you want to talk to them, you can. But sure.
Yes. Thanks, Chris. That's a really good question. I can say that for a single activity, I think the most important thing is we're seeing, when I talk to the Premier and senior ministers, it's about job creation. So, and that covers a wide range of areas. So obviously our university hospital is a hot topic, as the Premier has touched on. In addition to that, we have a very healthy marine precinct that needs future investment, both from the private sector, and I know that we're looking at that, and we're hoping to see some announcements, road infrastructure. So broadly, it's jobs, The granular is some of the detail that are being advanced by a lot of people in the community that I and my colleagues talk to on a daily basis. Thank you for that opportunity, Chris. I enjoyed that.
I think thank you, Chris, for the question. Look, Cook is a huge electorate, and I think it would be crazy for me to just name one thing, Chris. But I think, support for industries, like Michael said, it is about keeping jobs in communities. I will be looking at those job creating opportunities to support so that we are getting through these challenging times together. Right now, it's about recovering the economy, and that's what I'll be paying close attention to.
Thanks, Chris. Good question. I've got a long list, but I'm gonna hold some of them, obviously, for the election campaign. But if there's something that I want to talk to Cabinet over the next couple of days about, I think it would be around the Cairns Hospital and further work in that space. But as I say, I've got a long list. A lot of them are roads, but I'm also mindful that there's a campaign starting in about 5 or so weeks, so I'm going to keep my powder dry.
Very good.
Well, I'm not going to be as backward in coming forward. Look, there's definitely a unity ticket when it comes to the University Hospital. And I think it's, as I said before, Far North Queensland is bigger than Cairns, but the Cairns Hospital services the entire of Far North Queensland. So it's something that all of the members up here are very, very passionate about. I did touch on it earlier. For me, the fast-growing southern corridor of Cairns has great opportunities right now to ensure that we could accelerate housing construction, and we've done some great work with developers and also council in trying to make applications to the Building Acceleration Fund, and that's what you really get when you have both state and federal with a very exciting package right now. It's never been a better time to buy a house. We just want to make sure there's never been a better time to construct a house and make sure we get the jobs that go along with that.
Thank you, Premier, for bringing the Cabinet north. Thank you to all of the support that we get from the Cabinet. It's great to see the Cabinet here today showing Queenslanders just what to do. Jump on a plane, come on up to Cairns and enjoy all that the region has to offer. Losing more than $7 million a day, this regional economy, through the visitor economy contribution alone, desperately needed the support that we've heard announced today. It's an accelerator of the diversification that the industry has been doing to bring Australians here. As you can see from all of the most recent results, Cairns to Brisbane is one of the most popular flights in Australia right now, but we're still losing 70% of our income on a daily basis. It starts by supporting the Reef fleet, currently operating at just 10% of their numbers this time last year. Events will give Australians a great excuse to come here for the first time. Many Australians have been travelling overseas. More than $50 billion of Australian revenue goes overseas each year, and they can now invest that here in Cairns and the Great Barrier Reef. And with the support of the Tourism Minister, we'll diversify our attractions with 4 great new domestically focused experiences that will drive the economy not only in this pandemic, but right through the next decade. Cairns...
Can you just explain that 70% figure you spoke about?
For sure. 30% of visitor economy is driven by international visitors. So without an international visitor arriving between now and July, the industry is down 30%. Without visitors from New South Wales and Victoria, we're down a further 40%. So 70% of our revenue, or $7 million a day, is missing out of the visitor economy here. That means by the end of this year, we'll see $2.2 billion leave our economy, supporting over 11,000 jobs. So it is a vital time to be investing in tourism, as the Premier has done and the Cabinet has shown. The tourism industry supports 25,000 jobs in our community. 1 in 5 jobs are supported by tourism. And what this does is provide the catalyst that we need to keep those jobs here, to keep families in our community, to keep a thriving and supportive economy. So the tourism industry, Premier, is here to unite and recover with you and your Cabinet. We are here to be a job generator of the future. We know that not only can we recover, but we can thrive in a global world seeking nature-based and ecotourism experiences. So Cairns and the Great Barrier Reef is not only here for today, we're here for the long term as the world's leading nature-based and ecotourism destination, supported by the investment today. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks everybody this morning, and thanks Premier and Minister for coming along today. Thanks in particular to Curtis Pitt for his work back as Treasurer If you go around the corner, you'll see the Cairns Convention Centre, $176 million project that began with a commitment from Curtis and is being delivered by the government today. So I just want to touch on events in the importance of the $3 million announcement. We've got AFL games here in Cairns, the first one on Thursday night. We'll have 5 of those, and the AFL Grand Final Premier will come to Queensland, we hope, as well. So to see a $3 million event bucket for Cairns is wonderful, and the more events we can get to fill the convention centre and other facilities here, the better. Thank you.